Welcome to the second ever live recording of Agtech So, brought to you by Tenacious Ventures. I am your host, Sarah Nolet. We are here at evokeᴬ in Melbourne. How many of you guys, is this your first evokeᴬ? A few? And how many have been to all of them? A few as well. Okay, cool. Well, this is a session called the 7-Year Itch, because it is the 7th year of evokeᴬ, and we'll be doing some reflecting on how much the ecosystem has grown, what's working and what's not, and what we might need to change. But I want to start by taking you back to 2019 at the first ever evokeᴬ. We were here in Melbourne, and there were two folks among many who pitched. One was a startup founder pitching a future of soil carbon and producers making better decisions and getting paid more. And one was a producer reverse pitching, so pitching a problem that she was hoping others could solve. So we're going to start there and hear from Sam Duncan and Natalie Engel. So please help me welcome them to the stage. So how did those pitches go, and what's happened since then? Well, let's first hear a little bit about who these guys are. So Sam is the founder and CEO of GX Lab, formerly Farm Lab, that you guys might have heard of, a company that's grown from a soil carbon startup into a global environmental measurement business. Is that right, Sam?
That's correct.
Cool. Now operating across the globe, after riding a bit of the carbon wave, navigating a capital drought, acquiring soil analysis pioneer Ziltech, so another acquisition that we'll get to hear about, Sam has rebranded and is pushing beyond the boundaries of what we typically call agtech. At the same time, Natalie Engel is a Central Queensland beef producer and agtech entrepreneur, or former agtech entrepreneur. Once an entrepreneur, always an entrepreneur, maybe. She bootstrapped her own solution after pitching that traceability problem and built, partnered, burned out, regrouped, ultimately made the difficult decision to step back from building agtech and focus on adoption of technology rather than creating it. So today we'll hear not just a celebration of growth stories and everything up and to the right, but actually how the ecosystem's evolved, what challenges we still need to solve, and what that's been like for some humans living in it. Cool. So Sam, 2019, Farm Lab, you're pitching at evokeᴬ. You win a trip to Israel. At that time, what did you think the next 7 years were going to look like?
Yeah. This is an interesting one. I guess just to situate where I was at that time. So for the prior sort of 7 years, I dabbled in startups quite unsuccessfully. I'd learned a lot of lessons. I was also working full-time in Air Force, so I just actually left Air Force by the time the first evokeᴬ came around. And over those previous 7 years, I'd sort of come to the conclusion that if I was going to do something, I was really addicted to startups. It was kind of like, the peak startup era, especially in Australia, and really wanted to do something that I was going to be passionate about for the rest of my life. And I was thinking long and hard about that, and that was really around climate change and how, I was really looking at what role I could play in climate change. Long story short, there was a great McKinsey report out about that time looking at digitization in various industries. Agriculture was one of the least digitized industries, yet at the same time, it offered a huge opportunity in terms of, reversing climate change through soils and soil carbon. Soil is a major carbon sink for all those out there, still has significant potential to reduce our emissions globally. And so having experience in startups over the past 7 years, I'd looked at, all right, what's it going to take to make a business in soils work? Well, I don't have a network in ag, so I need to go to some event that's going to introduce me to the movers and shakers of ag. Investment is a key one because there's the valley of death that we need to overcome. And just a lot of learning. With no experience in ag, I had no experience in soils, and so really needed to be in a place that I could learn. So my back to your question then, 2019, I'm kind of coming into this fresh-eyed. I'm always a bit naive about things, and especially when I started Farm Lab at the time, really had no idea about agriculture and soils. So I knew that the next, well, really it was very short-sighted, looking at the next 12 months would be a lot of learning and a lot of how do I develop this into a business that can have the effect that I want. And that effect is to mitigate the effect of climate change using agricultural soils. And so, yeah, I probably wasn't thinking beyond 12 months, to be honest. I don't think any entrepreneurs do, really, when they start a business. It's really, day by day, day to day, sort of live and die. So, yeah.
For those that have been in the agtech space for a while, you would have seen plenty of ag is the least digitized industries, probably along with we need to feed the world and a few other things that we don't quite see as much in pitch decks anymore because some of those big bold things haven't worked out maybe the way that we thought they would, which we'll dig into a bit. Nat, you were at the same event. It was during a drought. Why did you come to Evoke Ag during a drought? You're probably busy on the farm. And what did you think would happen as a result of your pitch?
It was a huge decision to come. We were feeding at the time, and water was just non existent apart from underground water in our bore system. And so I had a discussion with my then fiance, and I'm like, I really want to go to this event. We've been selected. And he's like, someone else going to pay for it? I'm like, yeah, actually, they're going to help us. Okay, that's the only reason we're going to go. We'll find someone to look after the place for 4 days and we'll go. And I wanted to go because I was so passionate and so driven and so annoyed with the solution that was out there. There's got to be a better one out there to fix this traceability problem we had. And I thought, I'll take this down there and there'll be so many people or so many different companies or entrepreneurs who can look at this and go, yep, we've got a fix for it. Fantastic, because they know more than I do about this. So I thought that would fix it, which it didn't. But anyway, I was hoping.
So you pitched a problem and you thought that some entrepreneurs or companies would come up and say, oh, I can help you with that. Yeah. And so you pitched and then walked off stage, and what happened instead?
Not much. So I pitched, and that was an experience in itself. I didn't even know what a pitch deck was. And so me and 2 other producers, one who is Donnelly Firth, I see every year here, he pitched his bee problem. So we're there and we're pitching and like, oh yeah, good. I'm thinking, oh, someone will come. It was a full audience. And I walk off stage and I walk out the front. No one comes to see me. I'm like, oh, okay, maybe this isn't a problem. I think I spoke to a couple of judges and they're like, yeah, we really didn't think that. Is that an issue? I'm like, yeah, this is an issue. Like, is there, oh, well, you'll get there eventually. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is a massive traceability issue that I really think we need to do something about digitizing, not just trying with these paper stuff. Okay, well, maybe something else will happen along the way.
And can you just describe the problem a little bit? Like, what did it feel like as a producer? What were you trying to wrangle with?
Sorry, what was that?
What was the problem you were facing?
So when you put, this is cattle, and sheep and goats are very much the same. When you stick them on a truck and you need to ship them anywhere that goes to a different property or a processor or a feedlot or a sale yard, you have to fill out this one bit of paper called a National Vendor Declaration. And we had been doing it on paper for years, and that was great. And online NVDs had been launched. I'm like, fantastic, this is great. But often the book gets wet, the book gets out of date with policy, the book gets lost, someone takes the book to a different state, which helps no one, and you're like, right, there's got to be a way we can digitise this. And because I had a feedlot background, we'd sort of, in that space, had been digitising paper forms sort of along the way. We had all electronic records, we'd sort of been digitising these. I'm like, this is an easy fix. This is 8 questions and a signature. And where are the cattle going? This is easy, this is like a form you could do now, we do like that. Yeah, sure, absolutely. And I'm like, no, we like books. No. And the online one just didn't work. And the story I used, which was so true, happened to me was I'm trying to get one off because you couldn't write it the night before. You couldn't get on the online platform right the night before. It wouldn't give you the right information. The date was wrong. Everything was wrong. You'd print it out and there'd be nothing on it. And you think that's really handy. And the truck's like, I've got to go, mate, I've got to go. And the longer you hold them on that truck, the more stressed your cattle go. And if you're going to miss your curfew, going to your processors that way. So it took me 2 hours to do one bit of paper, and I'm like, there has got to be a better solution for this. So
anyway. You can clearly see the pain of that problem coming through when you talk about it. I was sort of laughing because to the point about like least digitized industry, like feeding the world, traceability, soil carbon, we had Agtech So What t-shirts made in 2020, 2021, and we picked some phrases to put on the back that were sort of like the hype of Agtech right now. A little bit cheeky, a little bit true, and it was like all those phrases plus like alt protein and like a few things. So they're, I don't know, legacy t-shirts now for sure, because many of those things don't really exist anymore, or didn't sort of prove out the way we thought. But I guess back in 2020 to 2022, Sam, you were kind of deep into the farm lab journey. Carbon markets were surging. You raised money from Artesian, scaled to like over 100 projects in a couple different countries. Did you feel like you were riding a wave, or did it feel like there were really solid foundations that you were kind of building a lasting business on?
Yeah. I think the challenge we set out. We had a hypothesis. I had a hypothesis when I started the business, and that was if farmers had better soil data, they would better manage soil carbon, because they'd be able to look at that balance sheet. Many farmers, not most, but many have agricultural soil testing done. We thought, look, if we can add carbon to NPK, CEC, clay, sand, silt, and carbon at the bottom, they can look at the change over time. But then, actually, do you remember, Nat, when we caught up in 2019, you told me your own soil testing story about how you had some cattle that were eating grass. There was a nutrient deficiency, and yeah, and that was quite. That helped shape us. I mean, because I obviously came to Evoke not knowing anyone, and I think it just shows the power of that network.
I told you the phosphorus story. Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, sorry. Back to the question. So the point being, I told you I came into this pretty naive, right, Sarah? I knew bugger. I didn't even know what a carbon market was. I had no idea that carbon credits existed. And I think that was really important coming into it, because I was able to listen to the farmer and the realities of when soil testing is done and why it matters. Now, carbon, we came into this and carbon was there. We'd done a lot of work in the agronomic technology around digital soil mapping with the University of Sydney guys who are here. But it was when we were sort of entering that commercial phase in 2020, that I found out about this carbon market. And we were getting calls from carbon developers. One of the early developers we worked with, who were also quite formative in our business, was AgriFood and Matthew Wonkin. And we caught up and we had a good chat about things, and we started helping them develop software that would then support their customers in understanding soil carbon. And it was only through that I was introduced into carbon credits. Now, I think, looking back, had we not had that opportunity, it would have been a harder slog. With that wave there, it allowed us to sort of bridge the gap, maybe raise a little bit less, get to revenue generation a bit faster, because we were able to spin out some software licenses to some of those clients. And again, it provided a nice little formative basis as a business to launch from. But if that wasn't there, I think it would have been a harder slog. We probably would have focused more on agronomic testing and maybe had a different path to where we are today. It's a good question though. Yeah.
Sam, you've made it clear that you kind of came into ag from the outside, bringing like different skills and listening to learn. Nat, you went the other way. So from, I know you didn't grow up on a farm, but from that farming experience and then thinking about starting a tech company, like what was the moment when you were like, this is a good idea, I'll start a startup?
Not quite sure when the good idea part came along. It's never a good idea being that you're prepared. When there was just no solution, and the frustration was building in me, and I was hearing it from other people with the same platform. And then when the sale of books went back through the roof of these particular things, if you could buy 25 in a book, and they'd stopped, they weren't allowed to sell books anymore. People were pushing for books. I'm like, nah, come on, there's got to be a way to do this. And I thought, well, all right, if someone's going to do it, what the hell, have a crack. I'm not sure my husband now agrees with me having a crack at some things, but and I'm like, there's got to be a way I can do this. And at that stage, I was like, well, other people are getting apps built. Maybe I can get one built. And more iPhones were coming out, and everyone's carrying their iPhone in the paddock. Maybe this is possible. Let's see if it's possible. Put it out there, see what happens. So, yeah.
And so fast forward, Nat, you started to build the business, you built some of the technology, you explored a joint venture to bring it to the seafood industry. That didn't go particularly well, but you ultimately decided to sort of shut the business down. What was that decision like, having gone through what is an extremely challenging path of building technology and getting customers? And
it was heartbreaking. But I had, obviously, I was, at that stage where I was looking after the place at home and running that virtually on my own with some free labour of 2 kids when they came home from school. And the seasons really hadn't come back. Like, we had feed, we had some water, but the seasons really hadn't come back, and I was starting to make some serious decisions. And my husband had changed, he works in mining, he had changed mine sites and he had gone further away. So instead of seeing him every week, I was only seeing him every second week. And so when maintenance happens and I can't fix stuff and there's this, and I got to a point where I have to make a decision. I can't keep pouring my time and money and energy into that, and this place is going backwards. We have to do something. And right, I will. And then, of course, when that joint venture didn't sort of eventuate into what I was hoping it was going to, and I can't keep making trips to Brisbane, I'm going to have to step back from that. So I shelved it. I went, okay, I'm going to focus on home and get it to be more efficient, and get our soil profile back up where it should be, or maybe if it's never been. Just make it a bit more easier to run and a bit more efficient, and then employ some more ag tech in there. But it just absolutely broke my heart to walk away from it. But I've learned a lot of lessons from that. So yes,
I think that stuff isn't, I mean, we talk about it a bit on the podcast, but it's not often, well, I don't think it's talked about enough, how much of your identity is wrapped up in a business. And especially in agriculture, like, you see it with farmers, like how much of their identity is being a farmer, and like it's normal for all of us as humans. But then when you have to give something like that up, it's like a piece of yourself, right? And so appreciate you sharing the challenge of it, because it is like a little thing that's become part of you that you're saying goodbye to. What did the perspective of having built technology do for you in thinking about adopting it? So you've mentioned products like evokeᴬᴳ and mobile and some things for the farm. Do you feel like you were a better adopter of technology, or a more empathetic adopter of technology for the bugs that would have, or how did that change your view on the other side of the table?
I'd always been an adopter of technology, much to Chris, my husband's dismay. He's like, do we really need that? I'm like, yes, okay, sure. But I think I was more sympathetic. And like when you're building anything, or if you're building a new machine, or you're building a new whatever, it's going to be patient with it and new things that come to the market. And when mobile did come, and I found it just by accident on a Google search or Facebook, I can't remember, I'm like, I can see this in its infancy, but it's got huge potential. I'm just going to hang on. And there was bugs, and then there was things that didn't load and didn't work, and I had no offline capability. I'm like, but this will come. This will absolutely come. And the other one is the series tags. When they first started talking about it, and I found them, I think, on maybe Instagram, if that existed, I can't remember. I'm like, oh, yeah, no, I want those. And everyone's like, no, you don't. I'm like, no, I want them. I'm going to wait till they build them. The first run come out, we got them. My God, were they hard to put in. You try keeping a bull's head still to put in a 2-prong tag that's got a stainless steel pin through it, and the gun is like, I can't even close this thing. But I thought they'll definitely improve it. They will. And I think I also had a box of them that sat there for 2 years I didn't use because I couldn't put them in. But then they changed them. So it and that's
they came up with that ergonomic device. Did that work?
Oh yeah, as long as you're not putting it in a bull. Cows, heifers, steers, fine. Bulls are like, I don't want that. I'm like, okay, so we want to change what we do. But I'm like, there has to be a fit for this. This will improve. This is like first or second generation. They will improve this. And they were passionate about it too, being from the industry themselves. They just had to get there. And so I think just being patient. I know I said that when I was to talk to someone about it. I'm like, it might not be fit for it, but just be patient. They will fit. Eventually they will get there, and then you'll be like, oh my God, wow. And the Rowie just goes, it's done, it's easy. You want them, everyone wants them. And now they've taken off in the US talking about biosecurity and screwworm, and you're like, see, there has a fit for purpose. But I think having been through those pain points of that one crashed, rebuild that app doesn't work, crash, rebuild that, just be a bit more patient. This stuff is new, some of it we've never seen before. It will get there. So yes.
We talk a lot about where people sit on the adoption curve and how the adoption curve looks, and I think there's like a difference between people who want to be on the bleeding edge and are willing to accept some of that pain, and people who want to be on the leading edge but not the bleeding edge. And they're just different benefits, different. You get the technology sooner, you get to give it feedback, you get that receptiveness, but a bit painful too, and when things are getting developed. Sam, we kind of fast forward on your journey. You came back out to raise capital sort of last year and found yourself in a pretty different market than the 21-22 era. That was pretty tough, and so it led to ultimately an acquisition and a pivot. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I guess the first thing was why we wanted to raise, probably, I'll just situate the room for why we wanted to raise, and for those listening, why we wanted to raise capital. So we'd just come out of 22 to 24, we'd had some large projects under the National Soil Carbon Innovation Challenge. So these projects, one we inherited from a company called Cloud Ag at the time. They have rebranded to Perennial, and they were operating in Australia with a good friend of mine as the GM, Ollie Madgett. Many of you listeners and in the audience probably know Ollie. Really great guy, a bit of a stalwart for the South Australian agtech ecosystem. And they said, look, we're pulling out of Australia. And Ollie said, look, this would be a terrible opportunity to miss out on, or a great opportunity to miss out on, depending how you frame it. But can we transfer it to FarmLab? We were FarmLab at the time. We were involved in the project as a sampling partner, but we weren't doing, and we weren't doing the remote sensing and the modelling stuff that was coming out of the US. And so Ollie had a chat. Ollie and I had a chat. I said, look, I think we can take this on. And I should emphasise, these projects, the government doesn't just give you money and then you go and do it. They give you about 50% of what you need to do it. And so simply put, we had to come up with the other 50%, which was through a combination of providing half of, a few of our own bodies, and then also just any spare cash we had to have. And so we made the decision to do that. We entered that program, and then by 24, we'd built Australia's highest resolution soil carbon map for about 24-25, which is being used. And at the same time, we also had a separate project under the National Soil Carbon Innovation Challenge with the University of Queensland. And so we'd got to the end of that project too, and that was about reducing the cost of soil measurement, again, using a mid-infrared spectral device. And the partner they were working with, the primary partner in that project, was a company called Ziltech. They were providing the technology to do scans on soils, and we were collecting, again, as the sampling company or the coordinator of the soil sampling, collecting the data. And so 24, we finish up these projects. 25 comes along. We really needed to commercialise the work we'd done. The government, we'd made significant investment, about 50% matched, and the government had made a significant investment as well. We wanted to realise that in the Australian ecosystem, and we wanted to help farmers use that technology to reduce the cost of soil carbon measurement, so we'd see more sustainability initiatives. So 25 comes along, we're at the end of sort of 24, we know we need to raise to be able to do that, and that would see us scale and commercialise these tools. Just for those that aren't aware, we'd built a carbon map in Australia. When we do that, every time we built that map, it was about $150,000 worth of compute. Australia's not a small place, the size of continental US, and we were computing this at a 10-metre pixel and running models and creating these maps. So there was a significant cost in the actual processing and generation of these maps that we needed to fund. The markets were pretty shot in, where they still are, at the moment, with some global uncertainty happening just everywhere around the world, which has impacted VC funding and certainly availability of funding. I think and I understand it completely. I think when there is more risk, generally speaking, high risk, what's traditionally a high-risk investment becomes less appetizing, becomes even higher risk, and then the rest of your portfolio is in this already risky bucket. So why invest in a startup? So we looked at what we could do. At the same time, Ziltech were in the process of winding down. They aren't a typical ag company. They actually came out of soil remediation, work with a lot of oil and gas companies to support remediation projects, cleaning up soil and analysing oil spills in the soil. And so their directors had been around, had run the business for about 20 years, but all were off doing other things and wanted to wind up the business, retire essentially. I think average age of their board, their directors, was about 75, 80. And so they said, we're going to wind up the business. And we said, no, don't do that. You've just invested, and we've just invested significant amounts in helping you build this amazing carbon model for soil testing. for ag. And so we struck a deal with them to acquire the business on a payment plan of a few years. Like all good entrepreneurs, we always try and we manage our cash reserves and push back payment. And we brought on the CEO, and we've subsequently brought on one of their lab technicians to support that arm of the business. Now, for us, we see that as a really key technology in reducing the cost, again, supplementing the current suite of technologies that we use to reduce the cost of soil measurement, not just in soil carbon, but in pH and agronomic testing as well, and just general testing. So we're having a lot of discussions with labs and some of the large agribusinesses out there in supporting that. But it's also, we've inherited, I won't say baggage, Sarah, but a lot of clients in another sector, mining and oil and gas. So when we acquired them, they had about 70, 75, 80 units around the world, talking some quite interesting places, as remote as actually Antarctica, the Australian Antarctic Division. You use this. Some of you may have seen an article on ABC News recently about cleanup, one of the at Wilkes station there in Antarctica. So REM scans currently being used for some of that contamination measurement. Nigeria, Kuwait, Southeast Asia, Canada, surprisingly not much in the US, but that works for us because we have an entity in the US. So that with that acquisition, with that entry into this new market, we thought, okay, we're going to take software we've built in ag, apply it to mining and oil and gas, and remediation technology that's been built for the remediation sector and apply it to ag. Because we're broad now, we decided to change the name, so replace farm with GX. So that was 25, integrating the business and understanding what we'd just inherited, and not inherited, but acquired. I mean, we did our DD, but it's always surprising because when we started, especially when we started calling these clients, ag's very friendly, right? We're like,
absolutely.
I can call you up, Nat, and be like, hey, should I do some, what should we focus on in central Queensland? And you'll generally pick up my call. But in mining and oil and gas, a lot of the clients hadn't been contacted ever. And then, so we were calling them up and we're like, hey, you've got a unit. And some of the big clients that we work with, some of the big Australian miners were like, who are you again? What have we got? And, we're like, can we talk to your sustainability team? And they're like, well, we are. Oh, yeah. And they open up a cupboard and they pull it out. And so it's chalk and cheese when it comes to just relationship management and account management. And I think culturally it's fascinating because I think what we've done here in ag, like agriculture is it's a very sociable industry. And so I'm excited to bring that to, to this other sector. Yeah.
Just to unpack one thing you touched on there, Sam, like there's a lot of companies out there struggling. There's some looking to maybe wind up. There's some looking at maybe acquisition opportunities. And I think, I've just seen the assumption that, I have to have this big pile of cash and I have to acquire the whole business and take on all the liabilities, and just a lack of kind of understanding of the flavors of acquisition that you could go through. And so I think what happened here was more like an asset sale. It sounds like that you could have payments over time, that you found something that worked for both sides, and then took the time to integrate it and figure out what was going to stay around and what wasn't. So just wanted to kind of tease that out because I don't think people necessarily think of acquisition as a menu of options, but rather like a thing that has to happen for all cash up front. I guess over the journey, Sam, on the acquisition, what went, one thing that went better than expected and one thing that's like a lesson do different didn't go as well?
I think what went better than expected, this is a tough one. I think what went better was we inherited a lot of really good SOPs. And when you're working with hardware, getting it to the state where you have clear SOPs, a good supplier arrangement, just like a box that you can give your customers with all of the hardware in it and it just works, that was really, really good. And it's a weird thing, but coming from a defense background, it's really nice just to be able to deploy a piece of kit, have it work, and have the people that use it understand it. Because I've been on the receiving side of that, where you can end up with crap, right? Like you get, I'm sure you have that.
What is this?
Yeah, that's right. So that was really good. That was really good. I think when it's still early days, it's still 6 months in. I think what we could have done better, I mean, the process took a long time, and we didn't realize the state of the relationships that the company had with the clients. So re-engaging those clients took a lot longer than we thought. I thought 3 months, phase 1, 3 months on board, bringing all the assets on board it. That realistically took about 6 months and really slowed us down from implementing the next phase of the acquisition, which is about changing the business model and incorporating it more into what we're doing with the software. So bringing that into the agricultural space.
Yeah, makes sense. A couple, kind of changing gears a little bit to reflect on some of the hallmarks of ag tech over the last couple years and how the ecosystem's matured. Both of you have been through accelerator programs, SproutX and Ag Frontiers. You've been part of pitch competitions, landing pads, raising money, joint ventures, acquisitions, like plenty of buzzwords and terms in this space. I guess not reflecting on some of those support infrastructure in the space, like what was actually helpful and what was just noise?
It's interesting, there's a lot of noise, but being part of an incubator that really understood what you were doing, understood where you came from, and not, dare I say sorry, but not making me go to Brisbane to be part of it. Having it when they ran it in Emerald was amazing, and the support that came from that, because, I mean, you only know what you knew, and I knew absolutely nothing about doing this. Like, I can start a business, but to go and build something that's never been built before and get it off the ground and get it out there, I had no idea what I was doing. So the support that came through that and the connections were great. I think now there's a lot more of that, and they've redefined those incubators and the access to funding, because that was, I think we gave back that was virtually, I mean, you got a bit of access to funding originally when you won the pitch competition and whatnot, but there wasn't anything. And to find funding was hard, to find access to funding, and even to talk to anyone, unless you could go qualify for a government grant or a different grant, there was just nothing really out there. Now I think we've done that better. It still needs to work, but I think for early stages, I think there's definitely more and more support for that. So yeah.
Sam, how about you? What was noise in the ecosystem, and what should we do less of, and what was actually helpful we should do more of?
I think moving forward, and I guess we're in dangerous prediction territory now, Sarah, so it's all right, we'll get a bit controversial, but I don't, I think moving forward, the next 7 years are going to be radically different from the previous 7 years. We talk at macro level globally, we're seeing now, we're beyond the rise of China. We're seeing now two global superpowers, one emerging, the other declining, and that is going to cause some really interesting things over the next 10 years. And Australia is unfortunately less isolated than it could be from some of those challenges. And what that means for Australian agriculture is that Australian technologies, American technologies too, but Australian technologies are going to be really crucial in helping manage costs, because we're about to be. Yeah. So there was a talk earlier today. I didn't get to see it, but it was talking about our least reliable business partner, climate. It's actually not true. Our least reliable business partner is China, and didn't realise this, but $16 billion of our commodities go to China. Comparatively, only $7 billion go to the US. So when we look at something, even a basic trade war with China, Australian agriculture is not shielded from some of those challenges. So then what role does ag tech play over the next 7 years? Well, we don't have investment to further ag tech at the moment. But what I think we have in the ecosystem is very good across both Australia and New Zealand. Shout out to a few of the New Zealand companies out here, Halter and Agavor as well, doing some really good stuff. Well done on the investment.
Cheers.
I would have loved to have participated, but we didn't have any cash, unfortunately. So I think for the next 7 years, it's going to become about, for ag tech companies, it's going to be, I think, hedging some of the risk that farmers are seeing and reducing cost, fertilizer inputs, trying to diversify. I mean, look, if we were smart now, if I could wave a magic wand and I had, some way to change policy across, because a lot of this needs to be done at the government level, I would start to diversify things like our fertilizer manufacturing, some of the big cost inputs at the farm gate, that we're seeing, and also start to diversify some of our trade relationships, because it's going to be a shock. But it will be very interesting. The role ag tech plays in that is really, really crucial, because when you need to switch, and again, just for another military analogy, look at what's happening in Ukraine and with Russia right now. You need government and industry and technology need to come together to spin up a response to some of the uncertainty, because this is it's going to be an interesting decade.
Indeed. Well, in 7 years, we can reflect back on
Oh.
all the things that changed and we got wrong. Nat, from a producer's perspective, like, we're obviously at Evoke Ag, and one of the hallmarks of this is a question. Everyone's like, where are the producers? Are there producers here? Should there be more producers here? Is this like the right audience? And from your perspective as a producer, like, what why come to something like Evoke Ag, and like, why engage with ag tech in the way that you do, kind of on that bleeding edge? How would you make the case for getting involved in the ways that you have?
Well, that's a tough one. I think maybe there's 10 producers here. No, was always a lack of producers here. I mean, the first ag tech thing, there's a lack of Queenslanders too. But yes, I love coming to this, because you guys you get me. I can talk about this stuff all day. I go anywhere else, they're like, oh, here she goes again. Look, just ignore her. So I can come and I can talk about this, and I can find you ideas, and I can find new stuff like that might be there that I hadn't seen before. But your average, I couldn't get my neighbours to come to this at all. I couldn't get, Ralston's a town of 100 people. I reckon I could get one to come out of all of that. I don't think I can. It's great. I love it. But it's sort of, they want to look something they can look, they can touch, they can feel that it's been tested, that their neighbour's using, that the area's using, that works really well and doesn't just fit on a tractor or something like that. I don't know how you solve that. And the time, like, this is a terrible time for us to be away from home. We're in the middle of calving season, and it's a terrible time for us, but I make sure that I can come every year. I mark this on my calendar. So maybe it's moving it, changing it. I don't know the answer to that. Sorry, what was the rest of your question? I've forgotten.
Oh, just what case would you make for maybe one person in your town comes, like, how would you get 3 more to come? Like, what do you get out of engaging in this way? You said sort of seeing new stuff. You said people that understand you in terms of the tech journey that you've been on. I guess I would argue there's more established technology now. Like, definitely in 2019 there were pictures of robots, but no actual robots, and that's definitely changed. Same thing with some of the other tech. But yeah, what benefit do you get of coming as a producer?
Coming to this particular event, a lot of the time you get to talk directly to either your founder or the really close-knit team, like the bloke who designed it. So that's nice. Sometimes in some of these bigger companies, you don't get that, or you're never going to get that, or you can find someone to talk to about it. So, like, even today, I'd been thinking about looking at Halter, and then I watched that presentation. I'm like, why don't I have Halter? Let's go back and revisit that. What's wrong with you? There must be something in there I said no to originally. So getting more information and more validation, like they've got, and they've validated it more, and obviously they're expanding and things like that. So sometimes you don't just need your validation from next door. Maybe you come and you see the research they've been doing, and then here's the stories from that, and here's what worked and didn't work, and we're improving. And they want to listen to you. Like, I've used Mobble, and I consistently annoy Jock, and he's like, what now, Nat? And I'm like, can you fix this? He goes, I'll fix one of those things. Oh, that's good. We're in the day, nothing would get changed. You bought it, that's it, that's how it is. So there is your adaptability with there. And then I'll use Mobble again, sorry, Jock, I want to link Mobble, and I want to link Pear Tree. Yeah, sure, we can do that. Whereas before it's like, no, we will not do that. So I think that flexibility and collaboration in the market is much better. And so if I can come to an event like this and talk to guys and maybe go, oh, people, can we do this? Oh, we hadn't thought about that. Yeah, okay, we'll take that back and see what we can do. They listen, whereas before I don't think there was anybody listening. Yeah, so it was a fit for purpose. If you didn't like it, that's your problem, go away, sorry. So, yeah.
Interesting, yeah. You guys have been through the same market conditions over the last, 6-7 years. Not an easy time. Obviously, some things that have gone really well for you both. Not knowing what you know now, would you build an ag tech startup again?
Yes.
She says with so much confidence.
Yes, I am a tragic, really. Yes, but I would have a co-founder. It is so tough to, even if you're as determined as me, it is so tough to do it on your own, do all those bits and pieces. And even I was part of Ag Frontier, everyone had someone else and I didn't. I'm like, I am missing that piece. I need that piece. So I never found that. Yeah, I'd still do it again, but I would be a bit more well informed before I did it. Yes.
Sam, same question. Would you start Farm Lab again, knowing everything you know now?
Yeah, I think in the West we have this idea of like success in startups as a big exit, and certainly when I was in the startup world and from 2012 onwards, that was you had to be an entrepreneur that exited and get a big exit, right?
Yeah.
I hate that philosophy. It doesn't. Firstly, it's the amount of entrepreneurs that actually get those exits is minuscule, and in agtech it's even less. The last big exit we had was sort of climate corp sale to buyer. There have been other exits on the way, but I think what founders need to do is measure their success in relation to impact and what they've done. And for me, that's what I would do it again, absolutely. I remember early days, 2021, 2022, we were starting to get into some overseas projects. And I looked into the back end. You can go into the database in the back end and have a look at what your users are doing. It's great. But I looked at some of these points that were appearing, and I clicked on one and looked at the photo, and it was this farmer, like not for subsistence, not quite subsistence farmer in India, that was getting his soil measured, and he was growing cotton. And they were running one of our partners were running a sustainable project in India for cotton growers and paying them to get out of it. And they were using our technology to do it. And I thought, actually, that's great, cool. I can walk away from the business now happy that I've done something. And I think we just need to, especially all the founders out there that are really, really struggling, look at your impact, measure your success by your impact and what you've achieved.
Can I challenge you on that briefly?
Anytime. So.
Which is, I think you're thinking about raising money now for GX Lab, a $6 million round or so. How do you talk to those potential investors who would become shareholders about the return that they're going to get if they come on the journey?
Yes, good question. I think the challenge, we're here to run, at the end of the day, the funding is a means to an end. And that ends it's not the primary ends, it's not rewarding shareholders. The primary end to what we're doing is mitigating climate change and creating a more resilient agricultural system, and now with soil remediation system of managing our land. I think if you're an investor in this space and you're not looking at the full picture, then that's a challenge. Now, financially and economically, share prices will go up. We have a very robust piece of infrastructure. We have the things to tie hardware together with software to do some things that many of those in the space cannot do, in linking remote sensing with soil testing and taking a hybrid approach and working with mining companies to remediate. So I think the financial outcome is there, but it's not, for me as an individual, I'm not financially motivated. And if I were, I probably would have stopped. Funny story, I looked at my superannuation the other day. I'm with UniSuper at the moment, so they're not a bad super scheme. When I started Farm Lab, because we work out of the University of New England Smart Region Incubator, big shout out to them, they're amazing. Do a lot of great things for regional startups, and we should do more with farmers as well, Nat. I'll look you up after this. But I was like, how much have I put in my super over the last 8 years? And it was about $50,000 over 8 years, because you pay yourself very little at the start. Yes, you're kind of hoping for an exit later on, but you've got to be in it for the passion, for the mission.
You get paid.
For the vision.
Wow.
I know.
I'm changing jobs. I'm
I always reflect on the things that farm entrepreneurs and startup entrepreneurs have in common. A few of those there. So I think that is a good note to end on, because it kind of comes back to that human element. And yeah, it's definitely one of my takeaways. I'll try to recap a couple here. But just that like the why of why you're starting a company, why you're getting involved in the ecosystem, and I think not forgetting how much of your identity is kind of wrapped up in whether it is you're a farmer or the impact is what you want, which kind of relates to another one around that shareholder alignment piece. Like I think especially as agtech is figuring out what sources of capital are right and how to find partners that can fund these businesses, like being in it for the same aligned outcomes, whether that's a big number, a small number, impact, otherwise, just finding that common definition of success. And then my last one, like on the adoption side, the early engagement, you actually have an opportunity to influence more features, and that kind of, if you find teams that are willing to listen, you can have a say, and then you can get the product that you want built actually faster than if you wait. So maybe that's the case for some earlier engagement. But massive thank you to Sam Duncan and Natalie Engel. If you missed us yesterday, check out Agtech So What. We had Brad Fruth from Beck's Hybrids and Frank Wooten from Vents on the podcast about finding the sweet spot in innovation. Massive thank you to evokeᴬᴜ and AgriFutures Australia for having us, our podcast producer who convinced me to do this live, Kirsten at Rural Podcast Co. And thank all of you guys for sticking around and coming in person when you could have otherwise listened to this while you were like doing your laundry or something. Really appreciate you showing up today and supporting us. That is it for me. I'll catch you next time on the next episode of Agtech So What. Thanks again.